14 years ago, I was given my dream job. I was 28 years old, and I was running the radio station for Leeds. I had everything I thought I wanted. A penthouse, a Porsche, a salary, status. But I was failing, and I was miserable. I'd been parachuted into Leeds after running our radio station in Hull. And I'd nailed it, I'd been the man. But can you imagine how often our corporate bosses from London came to check up on me in Hull? Not that often, right? They never saw our screw-ups. All they saw was our successes. But Leeds was different. Leeds was harder. It was a different city, a different team. I'd put a breakfast show on the air that was failing. I was telling my people what to do. I was trying to do the same things that had worked in Hull, but they weren't listening and they weren't doing those things. It wasn't working. And in my mind, it was just full of stories of how I wasn't good enough, how I was failing, how people were letting me down, how this wasn't fair, how I was going to get fired. And of course, I was stressed and full of my own stuff and being snappy to the people around me. It's probably, if I'm honest, the closest I've ever come to depression in my life. And at the time, we'd just bought an apartment in Leeds city centre, and it needed doing up. And the time I was spending doing up the apartment, doing that manual labour, was the only release that I got from that noise in my head. And one day, my partner Anna came home from work, and I'd been spending the day doing up the apartment. And she hoped that I would be a better version of me. But after 2 minutes of how's your day chat, it became obvious that I wasn't. I was still full of my own self-stuff. I was still negative and fearful. And she snapped. She said, "I have had enough of this shit. Knock it off. Sort yourself out. This is not who you are." It's not what they tell you to do in the books. But it worked. It was exactly what I needed. She broke my pattern. And there was a story that I loved at the time about a guy who's down in a hole. And a priest walks by and he says, "Hey, Father, can you help me out? I'm down in this hole." And the priest writes out a prayer and he throws it down in the hole. And then a doctor walks by and the guy says, "Hey, doc, can you help me out? I'm stuck in this hole." And the doctor writes out a prescription, throws it down in the hole. And then a friend walks by and the guy says, "Hey, Joe, can you help me out? I'm stuck in this hole." And Joe jumps down in the hole with him. And the guy says, "Hey, Joe, you're stupid. Now we're both stuck in this hole." And Joe says, "Yeah, but I've been here before, and I know the way out." And I knew I was in a hole. But I also knew I could figure my way out. And if I did, I need never be afraid of being in that hole again. But more importantly, I knew I could show other people the way out. So I set out to figure this out, I thought about all the things I already knew that I wasn't doing. I learned new stuff. And what I found was the obvious. How we show up, the success that we achieve in life is driven by our strategy, the stuff we do, and our state, the energy and the mindset that we bring to things. And the more I started to practice the stuff that I was learning, the better life started to become. I was still screwed. The situation was still the situation, but my approach to it was different. And I was so excited about this stuff that I was using for me that I couldn't help but teach it to the people around me. And obviously the people around me were the guys that worked for me, so they became the guinea pigs. I was doing 20 one-to-ones a week, coaching the hell out of them. I was doing mini trainings, running really empowering meetings. And guess what? It started to work for them too. We went as a business from making a loss to making a profit, from declining audiences to 2 years of audience growth. And it wasn't anything I was really doing differently strategically. The quality of my decision-making had not improved. But I was radically treating my people different. Instead of showing up self-absorbed and telling them what to do, because I was a man and I knew how to do this, I was spending my time helping them to become better, happier, more effective versions of themselves. And I realized something that changed the rest of my life. I realized that this is leadership. This is what it looks like. You know, human beings, we have all got phenomenal potential to do more, to go further, to be happier. When leaders choose to give their time to helping their people become better versions of themselves, the result is engagement. People show up to work loving what they do and giving everything they can. So, I had to quit what had been my dream job, and for the last 10 years, this is what I've been doing. Teaching leaders how to empower their people. And I work with guys like you, with insurance companies, AXA and DLG and Direct Line and Ageas, guys in the supply chain, like the Claims Consortium Group, and there's lots of people outside of insurance, like Virgin, the BBC, and sometimes the schools. And I was working with a school about this time last year, and I watched a teacher walk up to a little girl. And it was free drawing time in the class. The kids could draw whatever they wanted. And the teacher said to the little girl, who was called Sarah, "Hey, Sarah, what are you drawing?" And Sarah said, as bright and precocious as you like, "I'm drawing God." And the teacher said, "But Sarah, no one knows what God looks like." And Sarah said, "Well, they will in a minute." You know, and I love that about how kids think. You know, they are not restricted by the fears of life. They have an openness and a confidence that can be hard to hold on to as we get older, but it's crucial for our success. And that's my geeky fascination. The connection between how we think and what we do, how we live our lives. But it's interesting to consider why we're all just not naturally good at this anyway. You know, why we need help to think and be big. This is my niece, Charlotte. She's the one on the right. And Charlotte loves having a chat with Stone Buddha. You know, why not? She just goes, "This guy looks like me." But as she grows up, at some point, she'll get the rule that that's a weird thing to do. And she'll stop doing it. Same for all of us, right? We run our lives on rules, what psychologists call fixed thinking. If I was to ask you to spit into a glass and then drink it, what would your reaction be? Ugh, I see that lady there. She's like, "Oh, disgusting," right? But why disgusting? It's just water that was in your mouth, in a glass, back in your mouth again. Logically, it's not disgusting. But why do we think it's disgusting? Who taught us that? Parents, right? More specifically, our mums probably. And then that's how we live our lives. We just repeat these patterns. We run these rules. A good way to think about how our brains work is like roots through a field. You know, if you were to walk through a field just once, you create a little semi-permanent trail. But if you walk the same path over and over and over again, you create a trail that you can walk down. Now, when you come to that field, which way do you go? You know, through the field or down the path? You go down the path, right, because it's easier. Same with our brains. When we come to a situation, we think it through, we create a neural pathway. And the more we think the same way, we create a stronger and stronger neural pathway. And then when we come to a new situation, we don't rethink it, we just go the same route. We see the world the way we see the world. Our existence is full of this fixed thinking. This lady is the longest-serving professor of psychology at Harvard.
Tell us about the hotel maid study.
I love this one.
Yeah.
I love this one. So interesting, when we first spoke to chambermaids who exercise all day long, and we asked them, how much exercise do you get? They said they don't exercise. Okay. Now what we did was we took half of the people we were talking to, and we taught them that their work is exercise. You know, making a bed is like working on this machine at the gym, and so on. All we did was change their view of what they did
their perception.
Every day. Right. We came back 3 months later. We found weight loss, a change in waist to hip ratio, body mass index, and their blood pressure came down.
Yeah.
Well, tell us.
Simply because you had told them that they were getting exercise.
Yes.
They started thinking differently.
So changing their thinking about what they did had a physical impact. The way we think has much broader implications than we often realize. The way we live, the way we work, the way we lead is full of this fixed thinking, just patterns that we run on. You know, when you hear hooves, you think horse, not zebra. It's just the way it works. That's helpful so we don't have to relearn how to put our socks on every day. but it can also massively restrict us. To explore the fixed thinking that we have about leadership, it's worth looking back on the story of leadership. You know, in the Industrial Revolution, did we care what the lady 3 along from the right was thinking? Yes or no? Let's try it again, bit more energy. I know you can do it. I know it's after lunch, but I know you can do it. Did we care what she was thinking? Yes or no? No, we didn't care. Did we care what she was feeling? Yes or no? What did we care about? Output, production. Absolutely. That's all we cared about. In the early 1900s, guys like Henry Ford became the first people to become famous for setting up these big corporations. And when they began, they needed to look around for a structure to use. So they looked to what they knew. They looked to the Industrial Revolution and to the army for the only model they could find of big organizations. And so the top-down hierarchical command and control approach became the model for the men, and it was men in those days, who were putting together the railroads and the steel mills and the banks of the early 20th century. And that's our history. That's our tradition. That's the style of leadership most leaders learn from their leaders. But that way of leading is badly serving us in the modern world. Contemporary organizations, and Google is an easy example, go for engagement over compliance. You know, famously, they give their people 20% of their time to work on whatever the hell they want. And lots of their major innovations have come from this 20% time. And it's not that engagement is just about freedom. But what these guys know is that engagement is an emotion. Just like happiness is an emotion. It's not a survey. It's not a tick list. It's a feeling. And we've got great data on this, you know, about where we are now. Gallup have polled hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. And they find people fall into 3 boxes at work. They're either engaged, which means they love it. They're enrolled, which means they show up, but they don't really care that much. Or they're disengaged, which means they don't really want to be there. Question for you. In a global workforce study, which of those boxes has got the most people in it? Are most people in a global workforce study engaged, enrolled, or disengaged? Put your hand up if you think most people are in the engaged box. 1 person, great. Put your hand up if you think most people are in the enrolled box. Most people, I think. Put your hand up if you think people are in the disengaged box. Well, quite a few people, including Chris. Okay, let's look at the numbers. It's a bit of a trick question because actually it turns out the bottom 2 are the same. What about in the UK? Are we better or worse than the global average? If you think we're better, put your hand up. Yeah, not that many people. Most people think we're worse. Actually, we're better. We're British, so we think we must be worse, but actually we're better. But why do we care? Well, when people are engaged at work, they are 43% more productive. They're also better at meeting customer needs. They're better at solving problems. They're happier at work. And happy people equals happy customers. You know, Richard Branson very famously said, put your people first, your customers second, and your shareholders third. And of course, he was trying to be controversial. He was trying to make a point. But it's right, isn't it? You know, if we look after our people, if they come into work bouncing, they will take care of our customers, and that will take care of the bottom line and the profit. And actually talking about bottom line, how does that impact? Well, from a Towers-Watson study, organizations that were in the top quartile for engagement had 40% higher profitability than the rest of a sample. If you look at the Sunday Times best 100 companies to work for, they deliver significantly better shareholder returns than the FTSE 100. There's a clear linkage between how people feel at work, how they show up, how they behave, how customers experience their companies, and the results that they get. So it makes us think, what drives engagement? And we could talk about it now, and you guys have some pretty on-the-nose guesses. But we don't have to guess. There's a ton of data on this as well. Gallup have an instrument that they call the Q12. What they found was from hundreds of thousands of surveys, there were 12 factors, that were the best predictors of whether someone was likely to love their work or not, to be engaged. I'm just going to show you 5 of them. And take part in this research for yourself right now. Imagine you are your whole team. So that's either the team of people that work for you or the team of people that you work in. And as I read each one of these out, Give yourself a score, 1 to 5. 5 is absolutely yes, 1 is no. At work, do you know what's expected of you? Think about the whole team. Imagine your whole team is filling in the survey. Think of a number 1 to 5. 5 is yes, 1 is no. Everyone got a number? Okay. In the last 7 days, have I received praise or recognition for doing good work? What would the team collectively score? Think of a number, 1 to 5. 5 is high, 1 is low. Does my supervisor or someone at work seem to care about me as a person? Think of a number, 1 to 5. Thinking of your whole team. At work, do my opinions seem to count? Again, think of a number. And is there someone at work who encourages my development? It's interesting to think about this from the perspective of our team rather than ourselves. But it's also interesting to think, okay, so if those are the things that drive engagement, then what are they about? And I think they're kind of emotional, kind of human stuff. It's also interesting to think, if those are the things that drive engagement, then what's not there that people might expect to be there? If I was to ask a really boring group of people, okay, what are the things that drive engagement? What would they say that's not on that list? Yeah, money, right? Pay. So that's interesting. Money's not on the list, pay's not on the list. But is pay important? Yes or no? Come on, you really know the answer to this one. Is pay important? Yes or no? Yes. Of course it is. So what does that tell us? What's the insight? Well, let's look at it this way. What if we think about what are the things that allow people to show up at work and just be okay, to be enrolled? Well, that's pay. That's fair conditions. That's a good environment. That's stuff like that. So what are the things that go beyond that? What are the things that allow people to show up at work and love it? Well, it's the stuff that was in the Q12. It's more human things. So we get a little insight here, don't we? We go, okay, I get it. It's not about the processy stuff. It's about the human stuff. The processy stuff is important. We've got to get that right, but it's the human stuff that really lights the fire. You then ask yourself, okay, what is the single biggest thing that drives how people feel at work? The research on this is so clear. It's how they're led by their direct line manager. Think about those questions in the Q12. They were all things that the biggest influence on them was how someone is led. So we realize it is not about structures or rolled out company programs. It's about that relationship. And whether that leader shows up every day caring as much about bringing out the best in that human being as all the shit they got to get done. And I know that's hard because we've got a lot of stuff to do. But that's what drives engagement. A leader's desire to help their people, as I would say, live big. Make the most of their talents and their skills, their potential and their circumstances. David Bowie says this: if you're in a swimming pool with both feet on the floor, you're not living. But have you ever worried about something that turned out to be irrelevant? Are there things you really want in your life right now that you don't have incredible strategies for? Are you able to show up every day to what you do, knowing that you can make a difference to something bigger than yourself? Maybe. But I think many of us allow ourselves to play small, to deny ourselves the happiness and success that we're capable of, just like I was doing. This guy, Daniel Goleman, found that only 25% of someone's career success was driven by IQ, how smart you are or what you know. 75% of anyone's career success will be driven by something else, emotional intelligence, our ability to manage ourselves, our moods, and our emotions, and our ability to influence others. For leaders, it's 90%. Harvard did a study. They followed people coming out of Harvard in the 1960s over their whole career. What they wanted to show was a correlation between how well they did at Harvard and how well they went on to do in the rest of their career. Guess what they found? No correlation. It didn't matter how well you'd done at Harvard. Once you were at Harvard, you were smart enough. It wasn't that was going to make the difference. It was something else. And I think that for us as human beings, this is our greatest opportunity to learn how to tap into that 75%. And as leaders, our opportunity is to learn how to draw out that 75% in the people around us. That's what it looks like If you watch the Marines in a mess hall, you'll see that it's the junior men that go up to eat first, and the leaders eat last. It's a message. It's been ingrained in armed forces since the First World War. It's like the old saying of water your horses first. The message is, our job is to serve you. Our job is to look after you. We make sure you're fed so you can look after us. So I choose to think about leadership with this word. It's our desire and our ability to serve our people. Now, I know that word is challenging. Doesn't mean to be subservient. Doesn't mean to give people whatever they want. It means that leadership is a choice. Do we choose to show up every day caring as much about helping our people grow as all the stuff we've got to get done? It's not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those people in your charge. And when we do, when people know that you've sacrificed a bit of yourself, a bit of your time and your energy so you can help them grow, they want to show to you that your sacrifice was worth it. And people go from being enrolled at work, where they just show up to get through the day, to engaged, where they are loving it and giving their all. That is the leadership of the future. That's the style of leadership that works now and will work in the future, as opposed to the Henry Ford style of leadership, which is in our past. That's how great leaders change lives. But that's a big idea, right? It's not very practical. It's just a notion. So how do we turn that big idea into something real, something tangible? Well, I've spent far too much of my life trying to figure this out, trying to turn that big idea into something real, something tangible, something we can use to help us live big, to help us make the best of our time on this planet, and that as leaders we can serve our people with, so that we can help them develop these skills. And I think it's this combination of skills, this combination of mindset and strategy, this combination of things that help us develop the way we think, the way we feel, and what we do. So I spend my time teaching this now. And the full training program is kind of like 12 days over 2 years, but let me give you 20 seconds on each of these skills. And then when I've done it, I'm going to ask you a question. The first one is optimism. Optimism is a mindset skill. It's our ability to accept shit happens. There's a lot of stuff you can't control, and there is no point getting stressed about that. Our ability to say it is what it is, and then to move our thinking to focus on what we want rather than what we don't want. Focus is our ability to create simplicity out of complexity. To know a small number of things that at any time we want to focus on and achieve, and know that those things are in line with our sweet spot, the area where we can make the biggest difference, where our strengths combine with what we love, with what moves the dial. Questions is our ability to find an answer, a plan in any situation. To know that we can always walk through where are we now, what do we want, how can we get there, and what will we do. So we need never feel stuck. And our ability to coach that in other people. Purpose is our ability to have a deeper why behind what we do. To get out of bed for a reason that's greater than just to get through the day. And to know that our deepest intrinsic motivation will come from there. You know, our deepest layer of motivation comes from being able to take action every day in line with something we care about. Creativity is our ability to talk shit. You know, to not care about whether what we're saying is right or wrong. To be unburdened from fear and the fixed thinking that I talked about at the start. And impact is our ability to manage ourselves, on our moods, on our emotions, and know that the stories we tell ourselves in our head drive how we feel. And that drives what we do. So let me ask you the question. If I could wave a magic wand and make you instantly twice as good at any one of these skills, which one would you pick and why? I'll say it again. Dan, I'll ask you. If I was going to wave a magic wand, you could instantly be twice as good at any one of these skills, and I only gave you 20 seconds on each. Which one would you pick and why? Let's take a little straw poll. If for you it's optimism, put your hand up for me. A few people, okay. If it's focus, put your hand up for me. If it's questions, the coaching skill, put your hand up. A few more people, okay. If it's purpose, raise your hand. That's a few. If it's creativity, raise your hand. Even more. And if it's impact, raise your hand. The most. Interesting. Because as human beings, we care about the quality of our life, the quality of our experience. And we know that it's driven by our ability to tame ourselves internally. Now, if as leaders, we also show up to work caring about developing that in other people, that's remarkable. That's how great leaders change lives. So, let me wrap up. We've got a big idea. The big idea is that we have got the capability to live big. And if leaders choose to serve their people and help them make the most of their skills and their potential, the result is engagement. We've got a way to make that real. 6 skills that mean for us as leaders, we can make the most of our time and we can help others. But we need a way to make it stick. So for me, for each of the powers that I teach, there's 1 or 2 tools, things that turn it into a practice, something we can do every day. And one of them is inches. And inches is the idea that life is a game of inches, that we go little bit by little bit towards the things that we want. And by setting inches for ourselves, we create motivation. Imagine the cave person standing there looking at an apple tree off in the distance. And they go, I want that apple. As soon as they say that, they get a hit of dopamine. They've got a goal. Dopamine is the motivation chemical. And they walk towards the apple tree. They're like, oh, it's a long way away. I'm getting pretty tired now. And they look up. They see they're getting closer. They get another hit of dopamine, the motivation chemical. And they can keep going. And then they get to the apple. They pick it. Boom. They get a reward of dopamine. That's what we need. That's why we set goals and we need to set actions. Life is a game of inches. We go little bit by little bit towards those things that we want. Sometimes it feels hard. And on those days, remember the story of this guy. Randy Pausch was a lecturer at Carnegie Mellon University in America. And at that university, they have a tradition they call the last lecture, where they ask their faculty to give a speech as if it's the last one they're ever going to give. The kicker for Randy was this was the last speech he was ever going to give. He was 47 years old, and he was dying of pancreatic cancer. And the speech he gave is remarkable. It's life lessons he was leaving behind for his 2 kids who were 4 and 6. But that's not the most remarkable thing about Randy. I think this is.
You better decide early on if you're a Tigger or an Eeyore. Tiggers are energetic, they're optimistic, they're curious, they're enthusiastic, and they have fun. And never, ever underestimate the importance of having fun. I am dying soon, and I am choosing to have fun today, tomorrow, and every other day I have left.
So Randy died in 2008, about a year after that clip. But every time I think about Randy, I'm reminded of 2 things. Firstly, on my worst days, what excuse do I have not to at least try to show up as the version of me I'd like to be? And secondly, his words, I am choosing to have fun. He reminds us that our life is a choice, even when it feels like it's not. So, let me leave you with this thought. From our brief conversation, what will you choose to do for yourself to live big, or as a leader for your people? Doesn't matter massively what it is, whether it's big or small. Just choose and take the inch. I wish you luck and happiness. Thank you very much.